Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast. This is the SC, or the Security Awareness Series. Wow, I don't even know the name of my own podcast. I'm Chris Hadnagi, CEO and founder of Social Engineer, the Innocent Lives Foundation, and the Institute for Social Engineering, and I've been hosting this podcast since 2009. As always, the sponsor for this episode is our company, Social Engineer. If you're interested in training, we know a lot of people have been asking about that. We have our whole 2024 training schedule up on the website. You can go check that out. We have some many live classes going from now until June. So if you want to get in one of those, you should definitely check the website out. And we'll have some more stuff announced there too. If you like the topic of social engineering, then we invite you to join our Slack channel. You can get the link in the show notes. If you don't see it there, you just ping me on LinkedIn or one of the other socials and I'll get you into there. We have about 1,500 people in there now every day talking about the topic of social engineering, the psychology behind it, a lot of practitioners. Warning, it is a family-friendly and legal channel. So if that sounds like you, great. If you're looking for something else, not our channel. But if you want to join it, just hit the link on the show notes and we'd be more than happy to have you in there. I also want to invite everyone to take a minute to visit innocentlivesfoundation.org. If you're not familiar with the nonprofit there, we've been running that for about 6.5 years. And our mission is to work closely with government and law enforcement to locate people who traffic children and create child abuse material. And really happy to say we're right now at over 510 cases have been submitted to law enforcement agencies around the globe. Really proud of the work that's going on there. If you want to volunteer to be a part of the mission, you can do that, or you can help us by voluntary donations. You can do that too at innocentlivesfoundation.org. If you like the music on the show, then it's none other than the band Clutch. You know I'm in love with those guys. Neil helped me start the Innocent Lives Foundation, so we definitely have a big place in our heart for them. So give them some love by downloading their music and listening to them and going and seeing them live. That's really the best way. And last but not least, if you like the episode and you like what you hear and the topics, give us a thumbs up or a like and keep sending in your ideas for what you want as show topics coming up in the future, because we definitely love those. Now, let me introduce our guests here. First is Josh Bown. He's 15 years with the Department of Defense in the U.S. Army, and 6.5 years with the Department of Homeland Security as a Secret Service agent, 4 years as a digital forensics examiner, and an adjunct professor in cyber investigations. And with him is Rachel Jones, 15 years with a large U.S.-based financial institution and 2.5 years with the Department of Homeland Security as a Secret Service agent and subject matter expert in cryptocurrency investigations. Josh, Rachel, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. So let's start off with just a little bit, a question I like to ask people. Maybe, Rachel, I'll start with you. What made you want to become a Secret Service agent?
That's a loaded question. I mean, you have 15 years in a financial institution, work in investigations. It's nicer on this side to be able to finish up a case instead of just starting it and handing it off.
I like that. Okay. And Josh, what made you want to become a Secret Service agent?
Well, Chris, as a childhood dream, I always wanted to be a federal agent so I could affect good outcomes on bad situations. And I basically effectively saw that dream through. Took a long road to get here, but I'm here now, and I love every day of my job.
That's really great. And both of you focus on something that's really interesting, and maybe not a lot of people have heard this term, but on something called pig butchering. What is that? Because it doesn't sound really pleasant.
You're right, Chris. It's not pleasant. In my words, by definition, pig butchering is a fraudulent digital currency scheme that lures unsuspecting victims into large return cryptocurrency investment scams. They begin with some element of social engineering, mostly romance scam based in the beginning, that quickly transfer into making false statements regarding profit sharing in trading cryptocurrency assets specifically. And that is pig butchering by definition, as we call it.
How did it get that name? Like, where did that come from?
So pig butchering really is, think of the old terms of like fatten a calf before you eat it. So you want to get someone on the hook and get a little bit of investment. Then that little bit of investment sees an unrealistic gain, and then a portion of those proceeds are returned to the victim to say, hey, see, this is just your interest only. Don't you want to invest more? So that's when they go back in for the deeper hook and reel them for everything they're worth.
So they're calling the victims pigs, in essence.
Effectively.
Wow. So yeah, that's a pretty horrible way to define your targets. I mean, I guess if you're going to do that to someone, you really can't see much value in them. You know?
It is, and I guess kind of a play on words with the pig thing is, a lot of this fraud scheme is driven off of the greed of the individual that effectively is the victim. So that's just another aspect of it.
So Rachel, how big is this problem?
It's global. We're getting victims every day that call in, and it's not, 10,000 that they're out. It's hundreds of thousands. It's in the millions for some people. It's people mortgaging off their homes to get more money. We have a problem now where, we are looking at issues where victims are effectively ending their lives because they can't cope with what's actually happened. So it's a global issue.
Oh, I didn't know it got to there. That's terrible. So people are actually committing suicide because of the loss from this.
Right. And they can't cope.
Yeah, that's horrific. I mean, I guess if you lost your whole life savings and you didn't know how you were going to live the next day, I could see why someone would go drastic like that. That is, wow, that's really disturbing. And why do you think there's such an increase in this now?
It's the same as the old scams. It's just a new method. And so because crypto, in essence, is this new commodity, people see this value, skyrocketing, and they look at it as a get rich quick kind of a thing. And so when you start promising these returns at these levels, these people, they won't talk to, someone licensed as a financial advisor, but they get sucked into this and they believe they're going to strike it big.
Yeah. Oof, boy. I think like you said, Josh, it's, they play on, it sounds like they start off with romance scams. So now they're playing on loss usually, right? They're looking for widows or widowers. Is that the way it always starts?
Well, I can't put them in a category. I can't put the victims in a category quite that specific.
Okay.
But yes, it certainly has. It starts with the social engineering aspect, and that's, one reason why I love being on your show is the fact that this particular version of a financial fraud scheme does leverage social engineering to the T. And whether you're the bad actor, the subject that's committing the crime, you're effectively the social engineering expert, just doing it for the wrong reasons, or you're the victim that's being social engineered in some form or fashion, whether it be through text message, social media platforms, different games. The selection of the target is, at this point, I don't say that I could pinpoint any one direction one way or the other. But what is intriguing is it's anybody and everybody. We've had phone calls with victims that, professions range from, ER doctor, attorney, CPAs, all the way down to I'm retired and I'm on fixed income and I'm not sure how I'm going to pay my bills now. So it's literally runs the gamut on the victim base. It's the message is sent, the initial tap for information is there, and if someone responds back, then it's game on, and they start the social engineer.
So walk me through the next step. So that's the initiation, and then
Absolutely.
What happens next?
So the way I personally define it, and I don't know that there's any official designation of it, but the way I personally define pig butchering is effectively in 12 steps. So I'll broadly go over the 12 steps, and then if you would like, we can go back through in a little more detail on each step. So step one, contact is made with the victim. It's more than likely out of the blue via text message or some social media platform. Step two is where the initial bad actor is going to request, then transition almost immediately to a different communication platform, meaning an end-to-end encrypted application or of some sort. Step 3, what I call get cozy with the victim. This is effectively what you teach people to not become victims to. And this is where they're really building a rapport in step 3. This could take days, weeks, months to establish full trust, but they're continuing to communicate, continuing to pull that thread and truly establish trust there. Which brings me to step 4 is what I call set the hook. And setting the hook is the big ask, right? It's, hey, we've talked about things, we've gotten to know each other, and now, boom, now I'm going to start actually asking you the hard questions. Then we'll go to step 5, which is the elicitation or solicitation to download the app or visit the malicious website that's going to control the money flow mechanism. Then step 6 is they actually start to send funds. So now that you've got your new established friend that's going to coach you or teach you through cryptocurrency investments, and now you're actually going to start to send money. This is where you send that first little hit of money, the first little investment, just to get your feet wet, and then you get a little bit of return. Okay, so that brings us to step 7, is you actually get a small return. This scam doesn't work as well if they do not ever receive that small return. So they want to get something back to say, hey, I've had that positive interaction. There's that chemical flow that you talk about so much. And now I want to invest more, which takes us to step 8, which is invest more and more and more, because the returns are being viewed on the app or the website, however the bad actor wants to portray them, and they're likely inflated percentage returns, which goes again to step 9, whereas the app or website shows huge returns to validate the scam. So again, you're looking to validate the I'm not just saying it in the messaging, but then you can go to this other app that you've downloaded or website I've instructed you to go to, and you're hearing it from someone other than me. That, hey, look, this is real. These are the things that you're seeing. Please invest more money. Which takes us to step 10. Now they've invested all their money, and they're like, hey, you know what? This is good. Those numbers look really good, and a lot of times a lot better than I ever thought they would. I want to get the money out, right? And this is where I say, hey, the poo-poos hit the fan because the money doesn't come back out, and that's where they start to hit the brick wall. Which then goes to step 11, which is a very common thing with the pig butchering, is once the victim decides, hey, I don't really like this anymore, I want to do something about it, they'll hit them with the threat of, hey, you're in violation of anti-money laundering statutes, or hey, you owe me taxes on this stuff. And then they'll hit them for one last fee, whether it's an anti-money laundering fee or a tax basis fee. And that's like their last shot, because bad actor now knows, hey, this probably isn't going to work out anymore. I'm probably not going to get much money. This is my last shot to get a little bit more. And sometimes the victims bite on it and sometimes they don't. And then finally, step 12 is where bad actor then cashes out of the scam and uses a variety of methods to conceal the origin of funds through cryptocurrency, using smart contracts, what we call chain hopping and coin swapping. And that's Rachel's forte there.
So, Rachel, when it gets to that moment, then how difficult is it to track, because everything's now been transferred into crypto?
So I think the biggest misconception with crypto is that everyone believes that it is anonymous. It's pseudo anonymous because everything that happens on the blockchain is public. So you don't have to have a fancy tool or something of that nature, to go trace it. You don't have to go to banks to request these documents. You can essentially go online, depending on what the currency is, and follow that money that way. So it is rather easy for us to track those funds.
Okay, so now when you're tracking the funds, how easy then is it to link it to a person? So you can track the funds, but now how can you catch the guy who just did this horrible thing?
So Josh and I will run down as far as it'll go, and we typically have to hit, an exchange like Coinbase's or Binance or whomever, and that's when legal process comes in and we're able to start to identify account holders.
Okay. And do they try to, I imagine they try to do things to obfuscate that to make it difficult for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And do you find that this kind of scam comes from a certain particular area in the world, or I know that victims are global, but is there a certain particular place that these attacks are originating from?
We see most everything come, out of Southeast Asia. If we have to generalize it. Okay,
that's it. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so let's go back to this. You said something fascinating, Josh. I didn't think about that they would give a small return back. So how do they actually get like a money back to them in their hands? Like they actually get some kind of increase or interest or?
Yes, sir. So to elaborate that, what I refer to as step 7, getting the small return, in my personal opinion, this is a real crux of the scam.
Yeah.
This is where, again, the victim is going to receive a small amount of money in return as the air quotes interest gained on the investment that they've made, which typically, yes, it does come back to their crypto only account. And then they will basically be conned into reinvesting that same gain. So do they really put it in their pocket? No. Because they're like, oh, well, here's this amount coming back to my crypto wallet. This is great. Let me just reinvest it. Oh, and then let me cash out my 401k because that 200% gain felt awesome. Let me see how much more I can make.
So what kind of amounts are these first initial hooks? Like, or what are we looking at? Like a couple $1,000s, or what are people trying?
So I think the initial amount, it truly depends on the skill of the bad actor and their social engineering techniques and the victim themselves. Whereas one victim may have a net worth of $4 million already, doing an initial investment of $20,000 may not be out of question. But if you're social engineering an elderly person that's, trying to set their grandchildren up for success for the rest of their days, they may only have $500,000 to their name. So getting them to start with $1,000, $1,500, right, will build their confidence over time to where they're more comfortable with those larger amounts.
So when they get that money back, like let's say the person invested $5,000, do they get $5,000 plus some interest back? Or do they just get the quote unquote interest?
No, sir. It's typically just the quote unquote interest, just to show, hey,
right.
See, this is just the interest only. We'll give that back to you.
Yeah. Wow, man, it's just like I don't want to say anything good about them, but it's a genius way of using social engineering, because giving that back is like the reciprocation. Like you're saying, look, you gave me something, and now I'm giving you something, and it builds so much trust. It's diabolical, really, to be honest. It sounds terrible, right? So let's think a little about Rachel. When you do that investigation you talked about, and you finally get to the bank account, what happens to that money now that you recovered it?
So our agency, we pride ourselves in making victims whole. So we do. So the intent is to give this money back to these victims. And
that's wonderful.
Yeah, in its entirety, if we can. So.
Oh, that's truly amazing, actually. I don't. Do you have like any success ratios or anything like that you can give? I'm not sure, that may be an unfair question.
Time is of the essence, and the quicker we know that somebody has lost the money, the higher our success rate would be. So the longer victims wait to report, that's more time in between that movement, and crypto moves lightning fast. So if you wait 6 or 8 months, we'll still dig into it because there's always hope, right? But the likelihood becomes slimmer each day.
So let's say someone's listening to this and they just experienced this. How do they report this? What is the way you want them to get a hold of you?
So the first thing we're going to tell everyone is to file a report on ic3.gov. They can put as much detail in there as that they possibly can. A lot of federal agencies utilize that database in locating victims, so it becomes very helpful for law enforcement. The next thing is going to be to file a police report with your local PD or your sheriff's office. A lot of us have task force officers that sit in our offices, and so when those reports get filed, they get notified, and that it makes its way to us as well. And then the third thing is to call your local Secret Service office.
I think a lot of people, me included, until I met Josh, didn't know that the Secret Service does this. I always think of you guys as, you're standing next to the president or some dignitary or something and making sure they're safe. This was like kind of new for me to realize that the Secret Service did crypto investigations and child exploitation investigations, and you handle so much. I don't know how many people listening actually realize that, because I did not ever until I met you.
That's true, Chris. That's one unique factor about the Secret Service as an agency is we are one of the only, I think Department of State also has a dual mission, but to my knowledge, those two are the only federal agencies that have a dual mission of physical protection and investigations. And as the Secret Service, we're primarily focused on financial infrastructure.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, so we have the fear part, like the whole beginning thing. That just makes me sick. I don't know how you deal with seeing that. It must be so disheartening to watch people's lives just crumbling apart when you're doing these investigations. So what can people look for to prevent being a victim of this attack?
The first thing is, if you get a text message from a number you don't recognize and it's something innocuous, hey, it was great seeing you for coffee yesterday. Let's catch up again soon. We see a lot of those that come through, or, hey, it was so great to see you. Let's play golf next week. They're trying to figure out what is interesting enough for someone to respond. But if you don't know the number, just don't respond to it. The majority of people do not receive text messages from people that they don't know like that. But they're very familiar in these messages in a way that kind of gets you to open up and be like, hey, sorry, wrong number. And once you say that, they've got you on the hook. So
this has been happening to me a lot. Tell me if this is part of this. I get these calls on, let's say, WhatsApp. Of course, I don't answer them. And it says video call coming in. And of course, the picture of the icon of the person who's supposedly calling me is some very beautiful Asian woman. And it's like, incoming video call, and it will ring and ring, and they'll call back like 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I never answer it, of course, but do they use that method? Because if I answer it, is there really going to be someone on video? Is there going to be that pretty Asian woman on video talking to me?
That's very unique, to us. WhatsApp is likely step 2, in a lot of the investigations that we see. Going direct on WhatsApp is a little unique and from my particular foxhole. But the initial contact is they just want to find out, A, is the number still on and working? Yeah. B, is someone actually going to respond to me? And then C, when they do, what do I say? Do I throw out a random name and see if they correct me? Do I go down hey, I'm sorry? Most of them go down the line of, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was texting, insert name here. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to bother you. Hope you have a great day. Hoping that you're going to reply back, it's okay, no problem. And then they'll follow up with another, oh, well, I hope your day's going well. What's going on? Mm-hmm. And it's literally starts something so small as to, hey, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be polite. Hey, you had the wrong number. And then all of a sudden you find yourself 10, 15 minutes later, and you're still texting this complete stranger about nothing. And then it starts to transition itself into, oh, what are you eating? Right? A lot of times we do the forensic image of the victim device, and you'll see pictures of food and animals and cars, and it's almost this literally the bad guy's playbook, and you're seeing this unfold. And but why do they do that? There are commonalities. Everyone eats every day, more than likely 3 meals a day. It's just easy. And it doesn't seem threatening. If I just come straight in for the kill, it seems a little threatening. But when you start talking about things that it really doesn't matter and things that people do every day, again, you're the professional with social engineering. It literally starts with, I give a little bit and you're going to give me back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So Rachel, you were saying that there might be an actual pretty Asian woman on the other end of that video call.
Sure. I mean, these types of scams, they're almost run at a C-suite level. So it's run very much like a business operation. And so you would have people who are possibly ready to be on video in the small chance that someone actually does decide to hit accept. So it's not something that we normally see, but that's not to say that it doesn't happen.
And how about this one then? I get a lot of pings on LinkedIn. People just want to connect, right? And they're pretty smart because they know, I think people know me well enough to know that I accept this. So it'll be some young person saying, I really would love to talk about social engineering in the future. Right. And I accept that. And then we start chatting. And then and this is where I block them. They say, hey, I really don't use LinkedIn that much. Can we move this to text or to WhatsApp? And they want to get me off of LinkedIn onto that app. So is that part of this also?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, man, it's just like you can't trust anything anymore. Like literally, like so any platform that you use, they're in it. They're there.
Yeah. So you literally just walk the dog on the first 2 steps of what pig butchering is. It doesn't matter who or what platform. It's social media, it's text, it's some other socially connecting app. They just want to make sure you're a real person. You're actually going to make contact. You're going to respond to them. And then it's immediately, let's move it on. Because as Rachel was saying, this is not an amateur situation. Yeah. There are, in my mind, when we peel back the layers of the onion, there are teams and they each have their own roles and responsibilities. I mean, we're talking hundreds of $1 million a year go out of the United States and other countries into the pockets of these bad actors. And yeah, they have resources to bear too.
Yeah. So Rachel, you said step 1, you talked about ignoring those texts, and that's easy to say and hard for a lot of people to do. So what's the next steps in staying protected?
LinkedIn, for example, that's a perfect example of you want to be professionally connected, but are these people reaching out to you? Does it make sense? You like Josh said, our victims, they range in all professions. And so if you're a chief risk officer, for example, of a company, is, someone positioning themselves as an Amazon influencer really going to be your connection on LinkedIn with any value? Yeah. And that's not to knock a profession or on either side. No, right. It's just logically, who are these people? If you're going to accept it, what does the profile look like? Is it really robust? Are they putting things in there like timelines on LinkedIn? Where you've worked, what you do, what's your education, or did it look like it was just built yesterday?
Yeah. That particular woman I was telling you about that pinged me after she wanted to move it to WhatsApp. I went and checked her profile out. I should have done that first. And it was like, she was C-level at like Coca-Cola or something like, and you're like, oh, come on. You're like what, 19, 20, if that's even your picture, and you're a C, like, I felt like saying you should have tried harder. Like, it's not even realistic,
Yeah. And that's the thing that in hindsight, right? You looked back and you were like, oh, wait, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of people is, it is usually a very attractive female that is reaching out. And people are susceptible to that just naturally. Yeah. And then once they get sucked in, it's really hard for them to ignore the facts of, the dating profile was pretty empty. It didn't make a lot of sense. It's not somebody you normally would have connected with. It's not someone that you're friends with. It's not someone professionally that you would connect with. So it's really hard for people after they've made that connection to disconnect from that.
So I don't know who is better to answer this one, Rachel or Josh, but what's next? What happens next? Now what?
Well, I think Rachel really touched on earlier as far as what do we do if you feel like you're a victim, what happens from that standpoint. She went through that sequence of events about what you should do to alert the authorities, or how to recover your lost assets. There's also what happens next with how does the international community respond to this? Is it
that's
policy change? Is it the laws and regulations change? Is it a culture shift from everyone? Which is a big tie back into you and what you're doing with socialengineering.org. Is at its base level, it's worldwide training and awareness. If you don't bring awareness to what it feels like to be on the wrong side of a social engineering attack, then you can put all the laws and policies in place you want, but if the victims are continuously becoming victimized, then how do you really stop this? Because all bad guys going to do is just pivot to the next thing that it works or is more effective than the last.
So, I mean, I can't even imagine what it would look like to try to affect a global policy change. What would how would you even go about doing that?
That's certainly way above my little organization in the United States. I think you'll need to get a lot more heavy hitters on this show other than me. But it's obvious that globally, international law enforcement certainly needs to get together on the same page, and in most part we are, because we're all after the same thing. It's definitely an international effort, for sure.
Do you find it that before we get to the closing questions, do you find it that when you go to law enforcement in these countries, are they open to working with you to help solve these cases?
Absolutely. They are law enforcement or peace officers in their local communities and whatever country in the world that they are. And a lot of the victims are in their countries first, and then once they've run through those, right? And pig butchering specifically, one thing we didn't touch on is a lot of times the folks that may be sitting in that layer 1 or layer 2 of the pig butchering scheme may or may not be there through a human trafficking operation prior to that, where they were convinced of some job or some work visa situation to get them there. And now they're cold calling you because if they don't produce $50,000 in the next 2 months or leads that get, the next tier up, the money, then what happens to them or their families wherever they came from?
Yeah.
So that the human trafficking element and the personal safety is probably the bigger risk for some of the originating host countries of this stuff. Whereas the U.S. specifically, we're more of the pinpoint target victim because of our expanded middle class and the financial stability that the U.S. middle class has.
It's not a happy topic, I can tell you that, but I'm really glad there's people like you and Rachel out there doing this work and finding these guys and helping stop these crimes, because it sounds diabolical. I mean, I sadly knew a poor woman, older woman. She was battling cancer, and they took her whole life savings. That's the money she had for end of life care. And it's like, it doesn't matter to them. Just doesn't matter. It's just so heartless to see it occurring. And then if you know anybody who's been through it, it's terrible to watch them have to go through that. So, thank you for the work you two are doing in that.
Yes, sir.
So a couple of questions we always ask at the end. Books. Our listeners love to read, and we have an ongoing list of books, and it doesn't have to be about this topic. It can be anything you just personally like to read. So let's start with you, Josh. Is there a particular book that you want to recommend to our listeners?
So I think it's fitting with us talking about pig butchering and financial fraud schemes. I personally, I think it's the phase of life that I'm in. That financial stability is very, very important to me and my family, and ensuring that my legacy and whatever I leave with my children carries on. So I'm a huge fan of Dave Ramsey. So I'm going to go with the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. In part because it kind of feeds into this. Unrealistic gains are not, they're probably not real. So if you keep a level head and you stay focused on realistic financial goals, and I think Dave does a really good job of laying that out.
That's great. Thank you. And how about you, Rachel?
So I read so many books a month. It was almost frustrating to kind of find a favorite. But in our wheelhouse right now, I think one of my favorites is Tracers in the Dark by Andy Greenberg. Highly recommended. And it shows what can truly be done when we put our efforts and energy into cryptocurrency and what it has been used to buy and do, and that the story that is told there speaks volumes of the agents that worked several of those cases, and they touched on different marketplaces and forums and things like that. So it was a really good read, and was very fitting for the work that we do.
That's really great. Thank you. Two great recommendations. So if anyone's listening to this and they're interested in reaching out to become a Secret Service agent or just want more information, how do you suggest they go about that?
Well, the easiest way is go to google.com and type in Secret Service or secretservice.gov, and that'll take you to our homepage. If you're looking for more detailed job posting announcements, you can go to usajobs.com or .gov. I haven't been there in a while. It's either usajobs.com or usajobs.gov. And type in 1811 as a job series, criminal investigator, special agent, and we're always hiring.
Excellent. So you are recruiting right now.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And
all expense paid trips to all the best places in the world that you want to go.
I like it. And I have an email address that was given to us for anyone who's listening who might want to have outreach or speaking engagement requests or training inquiries with the U.S. Secret Service. That email will be in the show notes also, as well as we'll get the right link for the USA Jobs, and we'll put that in the show notes if anyone's interested in that. Josh, Rachel, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show and enlightening us on this horrific attack and helping us with some tips on staying safe. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks so much, Chris. We appreciate you having us, and hopefully we can make another appearance on a different topic.
Yep. Yeah, maybe a happier one. I'm not sure. Thank you all for listening, and tune in next month when we'll be back with another exciting guest. Stay safe. Until then, see you.